So hello, everyone. I am Irene Brank, also known as Mom. I do use she, her pronouns. I'd like to start by telling you who I really am, uncovering those invisible layers that we don't often see. If you were to look at me, you might know that I've been in corporate America for decades. You might think I'm white, and I'm sure you think I'm in my 40s, right? Some of that's true, the decades piece. But if you really, really know me, right, and that's where belonging comes from, you would know that I am a cisgender woman. I am straight. I am actually biracial. My dad was Chinese. I live with depression, which is generational in my family, and I am over 60 years old, so I'm not in my 40s. I was brought up in a time when you didn't say the word gay, and it wasn't that long ago. I am one of less than 5% of the humans in this world, so the whole big wide world, that have a transgender kid. How cool am I? I got one, and most of you did not. I've been married for 39 years to the same man. So I ask you, and please feel free to use the chat and talk to each other, and we'll keep on going. Is there anything about you that you've never shared at work? Throw it in the chat. I'd love to know more about you, and I'm sure you'd like to know more about each other, so feel free to do that. As Sasha said, I do work at Mass Mutual in insurance operations. I do want to give a shout out to Amanda Wallace. Some of you may know Amanda. She works directly for Mike Fanning. Shout out to Mike Fanning as well. They have been a part of my journey since the beginning. And I am blessed to work at Mass Mutual and to have had the support that I have had. But as Sasha said today, I am here as a mom and a speaker, and sometimes called an accomplice versus an advocate, but here and very grateful to share a bit of my story. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before we do that, I do want to let people know that this is Transgender Awareness Week, ending with Transgender Day of Remembrance, which I'll show that in a minute. So in 2021, a Gallup poll showed that 68% of people surveyed said that they didn't know someone who's trans. They likely do, but don't know it. So Trans Awareness Week is to change that through talks like these, and of course addressing the lack of media representation over the past hundreds of years that shaped our understanding and opinions about trans people. I had my own opinions about trans people before my daughter came to me as a transgender woman. Trans Day of Remembrance is specifically to remember trans people, and it is on the 20th, I believe, this year, who have lost their lives to violence because they are trans. In the United States, it averages about 40 people a year that are murdered, for lack of another term, because they were trans. The majority, probably 99% of them, are Black trans women. So really, really an important day to recognize and to think about the way people's lives are affected by being transgender, by simply being themselves. So my story, so I have 3 children. Sam is the surprise more than once. She is our youngest child. And when we had our kids back in the day, we didn't know if they were boys or girls. We didn't even ask. I suppose we could have. But when we had them and we said we would love them. There were never any ifs. We didn't say we would love them if they were smart or if they were blonde or if they went to college or if they didn't have diabetes. We just said we would love our kids because that's our job. And all I ever really wished for with my kids was health and happiness and safety, right? And for this one, I didn't get health or happiness. She was different from the beginning, very solemn and quiet. It was a struggle throughout all of her school years, right? So headaches, belly aches, ER visits. And the scariest thing that we started to see emerge as she got a little bit older were depression and anxiety. And that's really hard to see in a very young child. We are only as happy as our saddest child as parents. No parents want this for their kids, and there was nothing I could do to help, right? Other than work with medical practitioners, of course. There were no obvious answers. I knew, right? Because a mom knows. So I knew she was different. I couldn't pinpoint it. Was she an introvert? Was she gay? Was she going to have this kind of generational deep depression that tends to run in my family? And how could I set her up for the happiest and healthiest life that she could live? So when this one was young, and you can see a picture here up on the screen, she had a fascination with bandanas and cowboy boots. I thought for sure this kid was going to be a cowboy. Yeah, a cowboy, because Sam was born a boy, right? Genetically. So her room had cowboy stuff, and we bought cowboy boots and bandanas and all of those things. When we look back now, with knowledge and language that we have learned, the bandanas weren't representing cowboys at all. She was using them to create hair. So they were around her head, creating hair. They were around her waist, which was likely creating a skirt. And I thought we had a cowboy on our hands, right? And when I asked her later on in life, what was with the boots? Because we had to buy that darn pair of cowboy boots at least 5 times because children grow. Fortunately, Walmart carries them. And I asked her, so what was with the boots? If you didn't want to be a cowboy, why were you so kind of fascinated with the boots? And her answer was, because they clicked like your shoes, Mom. Right? So there were all of these signs along the way, none of which we understood, and none of which our pediatrician understood. Right? I knew all of her friends were girls. I told our pediatrician, she only has friends that are girls. Should I be concerned? You know, certainly the pediatrician talked with her about sexuality as she got older. Never even crossed anyone's mind. The word transgender did not cross our minds. And oh, by the way, I didn't even know what the T was in LGBTQ. I didn't. I thought a transgender person was a 6-foot man in a dress, because that's what the media taught me. Thank you, Jerry Springer, right? That's what we are taught by the media and stories around us, right? Where we see people depicted in certain ways. You know, special victims unit, you know, you saw prostitute 1 and prostitute 2 and prostitute 3 over and over again. So the media has formed these opinions for us. But she was, like all kids, a kid who wanted to fit in, right? She was bullied for expressing herself. She was bullied for growing her hair long. We thought she wanted to be a hippie like her dad was. And for wearing jewelry, which of course was always boy jewelry, because I wouldn't let my son wear girl jewelry. It was spiders and things like that. And nail polish. And I said, sure, all my kids can wear nail polish, but yours should be black or green, because boys don't wear pink, right? Because of all these constructs that are created for us in the world, again, through media, etc. Now, when we look back and actually have conversations about her experience in school and in life, I realized she never took her shirt off at the beach, at a swimming pool. And I thought it was because she was a little chubby and she was just shy of her body, so didn't want to take her shirt off. There was probably another reason, right? Never really got invited to birthday parties because she was a boy, and girls had girls to their birthday parties. And even things so heartbreaking that this young person from kindergarten through high school never, ever once used the school bathroom, ever, right? Because she didn't fit. Didn't know why, but knew that she was not supposed to go in the boys' room. So imagine being that child in gym class, right? Where the gym teacher says, okay, the boys line up over here and the girls line up over here, and having to fit in and follow along when you know that you are different. So all of these experiences that our kids and we had as children, we take for granted. Sam never had a sleepover ever, right? Until she was really an adult, right? 18 or 19 years old. We didn't know, right? And as parents, again, we want happy and healthy. The turning point for her was for help, right? We recognized her daughter was kind of my other daughter was kind of a snoopy mother hen to this one. And we did find some evidence of cutting, right? I didn't even know what cutting was. And this child was cutting. There was food limitations, so limiting what she was taking in. And then a cry to her sister that mentioned not wanting to live like this. As a parent, that is extremely frightening. And that's when we got really serious about making sure that we got her into some heavy counseling and watched her very, very closely. And through counseling and many, many times of me asking over and over again, are you sure you're not gay? Is it your sexuality? Finally, that one day, sitting in the car before her counseling session, she said, Mom, I have something to tell you. I'm like, what is it? And she said, I'm gay. I said, okay. And she looked at me like I was supposed to respond differently. And I said, we just love you. You know, I knew you were different. It's fine, right? We'll figure it out and we'll help Dad figure it out, right? And I knew it all along, or at least I thought I did. I thought I knew that that's what it was. But even after that, Sam was still not the happy, healthy child that every parent wants. Again, we're only as happy as our saddest child, and it's really hard to watch a sad child. So at this point, right after Sam came to me as being a gay young man, 16 years old or so, I joined Mass Mutual, right? And I found a person who I thought was gay. Don't do this. It was not appropriate behavior. And I said, hey, Stephen, are you gay? Because I have a gay kid. I don't know how to raise a gay kid. And I want someone I can ask questions. Again, do not do that at home. There's better ways to have that conversation. And Stephen, of course, said, yes, I am, Irene, and you can join Pride. I'm like, I'm not gay. I can't join Pride. And he's like, yes, you can. You can be an ally. I'm like, what's an ally? I mean, it was, I had no clue at all. I will say that Pride was a very big part of my journey at Mass Mutual. So about 6 months after that, this young person came bouncing into my room. And if Sam were to tell you the story, her story is very different than mine. My recollection of the story is not the same as hers. The truth is somewhere in the middle. I just don't know exactly where. So I get to do the beginning of this story. So you're hearing my story. So this kid bounced into my room and said 6 words that would change my life forever and make me who I am today. And those 6 words were, Mom, I'm not gay, I'm transgender. My response, embarrassingly enough now, was, can't you just be gay, right? It would be so much easier for you, but maybe for me too. And as a mom, her life just flashed before me. Will she find love? Will she find happiness? Will she get married? Will she have kids? Can I keep her safe in this world that I've grown up in, that I didn't even know what transgender people were, right? How do I do that as a parent, right? So as a parent, I learned. I went to the World Wide Web, right? I found Google, I found videos, I watched Barbara Walters, I watched everything and read everything I possibly could to make sure that I could help this young woman that you now see on the screen live the happiest, healthiest and safest life possible. So if we think about it, today Sam is happy and healthy. She does have gender dysphoria, right? Which is a difference between the sex you're assigned at birth and your gender identity, right? It is not curable, but it is treatable, right? Through transition, whatever transition means. And we'll talk more about that. So the journey, you know, I smile as I'm telling it. I get very close to tears and I hide them well because I'm good at knowing my triggers at this point. But it was long and painful and hard and joyous all at the same time. You know, we went from her socially transitioning on the way to college to gender confirmation surgery, which is huge surgery when it's your child, right, going through that. We had to go from telling our family, right? You know, our son is an iron worker. I remember the conversation with him. It went just like this. We are all adults here, so I'm going to use the real words. I said, so TJ, Sam is not gay, she's transgender. And he had two questions. The first was, well, I guess she can't be my best man. I'm like, maybe a bridesmaid, because he was going to get married in the following year. His next question was, will she be able to have sex? Right? I hope you're laughing because I'm supposed to make you laugh and cry. The answer was, of course, yes. And he said, oh, I'm good. And off he went, right? Our middle daughter, and these kids are 8.5 and 11 years older than Sam. As I said, she was a surprise twice. My middle daughter asked if it was her fault, right? So she played a lot with Sam, and maybe because she played with Sam too often, and maybe she played too many girl things, maybe she turned Sam transgender. Well, if I were live and my daughter were here with me, I would look at her and say, oh my goodness, is this contagious? Are there people here going to catch being transgender? The answer is no. We're born the way we're born. We can't make someone transgender. We can't make someone gay, and we can't make them not be who they truly are. So no, it was not my middle daughter's fault. It was a hard journey. It was a lonely journey. As I said, I'm one of 5% of the moms in the world that get a transgender kid. That's lonely. You don't go to the school committee meeting or the PTO and raise your hand and say, hey, I have a trans kid. Anybody else got one? It doesn't happen that way. Finding people who are like you as a parent can be really, really hard, right? Which is why I do what I do, right? We also had to tell our friends, right? I had to tell people at work that I don't have a son anymore. I have a daughter whose name is Samantha. Lucky with the name choice of Samuel, made it a little bit easier for us. I had to use the right pronouns. It was a long and it was a challenging journey for all of us. But Sam is Sam, and we had to do it, and it was beautiful, and it's created who we are today, who we are as a family, how we've been able to change people's lives and minds and hearts along the way. So I am so incredibly grateful that I am one of that 5%. And when I work with other moms and dads and loved ones, I remind them that we are special, right? We get to raise these human beings that are so beyond those of us who live cisgender lives, right? They've seen the world from two different perspectives and have really lived, for the most part, in two different perspectives, other than our really teeny tiny baby trans kids who know very, very young. So again, this is Sam today. She's graduated college. We'll talk a little bit about that. She's an influencer, as Sasha said. All right, so let's see what comes up next. So as I said, 6 words changed my life. So I'm going to share with you a quick video. I will likely go off camera during the video because it still gets to me a little bit. So sorry in advance, but not sorry. So let's get to that video. So as you can see, I did not go off video because I was afraid my video would stop. So I hope you enjoyed that video. As I was watching it, which it still gives me the chills to watch it, I realized it's probably 7 years old, that video, or 6.5. Sam will correct me if I was wrong. This is Sam today. She is known as Samantha Lux out in the world of media, so YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all of those places. So I'm obligated to say subscribe and like, so make sure you do that. And I'd love to talk more about her, but she is sitting right next to me, so I'm going to bring her on. So welcome, Sam. So just so you know, my seat's up really, really high and hers is down really, really low because I don't want to look short.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Samantha. Use she, her pronouns. Happy Trans Awareness Week.
Right. So we're going to ask Sam some questions. We'll try and get through it as quickly as we can because we are short on time. And then we'll do a little bit of work on how you can be a really good ally to folks in your life that may be transgender. All right, so Sam, the video is pretty powerful. We still play it now, and I think it's 7 years old or something like that, almost 7.
Yeah, just about 7, yeah.
So when did you realize that you were transgender, and what was that experience like for you?
So I realized that I was transgender my senior year of high school. So it was a very transitional period for me, no pun intended. So it was very, very overwhelming. To be honest, it was terrifying. I didn't think that I would ever be able to successfully transition and live my life the way that I, knew that I wanted to and knew that I had to do. Growing up, the only trans representation that I saw, like my mom said, was the people on Jerry Springer or the people getting killed in TV shows or, the drag queens and video games that were put in to be made fun of. I never really saw it as something that people actually were. I saw it as something shameful that people did. So it was very, very scary. I was taught to be afraid of being trans. I was taught that it was something that I had to hide.
Mm-hmm. As I work with trans people, who I am very fortunate to have a pretty wide group of folks in my life that are trans, most of them, if not all, will say at a very young age they knew something was wrong with them, right? Wrong with them. And again, most of us didn't have words for it till very recently. Thank you for that, Sam. Yeah. So you graduated college in 2019, and today you are a media creator or influencer. I didn't even know what that meant before. Can you tell us why you chose this work?
Yes. So like I just said, growing up, the only representation that I saw was extremely negative. It was extremely damaging to my perception of trans people. So when I realized that I had to transition, that was my life, this is who I am, I knew I wanted to give back. I love media, I love YouTube, I love creating. So for me, it was kind of very natural progression to YouTube. But it was something that I felt very passionate about because that was the way that I realized that I was trans, was finding other creators on YouTube and seeing that people could live happy, successful, good lives being themselves. So what I've decided to do is create trans-centered content. I talk about not only my life, but, trans people in pop culture or trans people in the media, just anything trans related. I do my best to put the most positive spin on it, the most happy, uplifting kind of spin on it that I can, because I want people to know that being trans isn't something to be afraid of. It's not something to be shameful. It's just who we are, and it's something that shouldn't be hidden.
So thank you for that. Thank you, Abby. I hope I said your name right. She is truly an inspiration in every sense of the word. We can see in her comments in YouTube, there are parents who say, you've changed my perception of my child. We've had people say, I only transitioned because I met you, right? Because it's hard to meet other trans people. So oftentimes it's through media. So we're going to quickly do a quick lesson about gender because we're running out of time. So we're going to do the really fast version. And then we'll do a little bit of work on allying. So thank you for that comment, Abby. And feel free to use your chat and talk to each other. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. All right. So gender basics.
Okay. So first of all, I want to make the distinction that we're not talking about sexuality. Sexuality is who you are attracted to. You know, if you're a man that likes women, you're straight. A man that likes men, you're gay. We all know sexuality. We don't have to talk about that today. What we're going to be focusing on is sex versus gender. So as you can see, sex and sexuality are very different. Do we want to go and add gender in here?
Yes.
Yes. So sex, very, very basically, I'll pull out the World Health Organization definition for you guys. Sex is defined as the biological characteristics that define humans as male or female. So sex encompasses all of the physical attributes that determine whether you are male or female. So secondary sex characteristics, primary sex characteristics, the physical stuff. Gender, however, is a lot more complicated. It's a lot more socially based. So I'll just read the World Health Organization definition for gender as well. Excuse me. Gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. So this includes the norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a man, woman, girl, or boy, as well as their relationships with each other. So these norms and these roles can include everything from the way that we talk. You know, men tend to have a lot more of a monotone pitch when they speak. Women tend to, go up in their intonation a little bit. That's not determined by your biology at all. It's just something that has been socially created, but it does indicate gender. The same way that the way that you sit isn't necessarily, biologically determined, but women tend to sit a lot more confined. They tend to take up less space for whatever reasons that we won't get into, but those things are not biologically determined. They are simply socially constructed. When we have these social constructions passed down from generation to generation to generation, they can seem like they are biologically determined because it's what has been going on for hundreds of years. It's what we have been taught is normal, is to be expected from men and from women. But when we really break it down and think about it, it is completely socially constructed. It's just what we are teaching people is how they are supposed to behave and how they're supposed to act and operate in the world. So yeah, gender is broken down into cisgender and transgender. So if you are transgender, it means that you don't identify with the sex that you were assigned at birth. So for cisgender people, their sex and their gender align. So, their body parts and everything that says that they are either male or female correspond with the gender of, where they feel most comfortable. It's important to note that these roles and these behaviors and stuff like that aren't, actions that people take. They can be, performed and stuff like that. But most of the time, these are very natural behaviors. It's just what comes the most naturally to people. So for me, when I transitioned, it wasn't like, okay, I need to start acting like a girl now. I need to start crossing my legs. It was more so a release of all of the filters that I put on myself. It was letting go of the thoughts in the back of my head that say, would a man act like this? Would a boy do this? Because you want to be seen as normal. It was letting go of all of that and just operating in the world as who I am and what was the most natural to me.
Yeah, I think I've heard the quote from another young lady who's trans that the best thing about being a trans girl, is that I don't have to pretend to be a boy anymore, right?
Exactly.
So it's pretending your lives. And let's remember, we also construct that there are only males and females, right? Or identities, when actually it's not binary, it's a spectrum, right? So there are people who don't identify as either or identify as both. And so that's a big population of folks that would be considered, to put them all in one bucket in the trans umbrella, would be non-binary. So we don't want to forget about them as well.
I do want to quickly mention what makes people feel like they're trans or non-binary. It's just, it's just who we are. You can think about, well, why are you gay? Why are you this? Why are you that? It's just who we are. We can get into genetics, we can get into all of that, but at the end of the day, it's just who we are.
All right, so we're going to go super fast because we're really late. If one of you that is managing us wants us to skip and go really, really fast, just get on camera and yell at me. Okay. All right, so there are some facts. I can read these really fast. 5% or 2 million Americans are transgender, at least, right?
It's likely these numbers are likely a little bit low, just because reporting on transgender people is not the most effective.
Right. We don't study trans people, and all trans people can't report that they are trans. Remember, I told you 68% of Americans don't know someone who's trans. Well, y'all do now. Just saying. Maybe that number changed a little bit. 41% of transgender people have attempted suicide, right? 41 versus 1.6% of the general population. 47% have adverse job outcomes, such as being not hired, not promoted, or fired. Very high unemployment rates for transgender people. 90% of trans people have been harassed or mistreated at work, or took actions like hiding to avoid it, right? So they're coming to work not as their true selves. 78% that have transitioned at work felt more comfortable and their job performance improved. I'm going to tell you, every trans person I know is already an overachiever because they're trying to achieve outside of what they believe they can. So be aware these are going to be performers in your organization. I think what's important for you at Lenox Advisors is that because trans people have historically been underemployed or unemployed, leaving them less likely to be adequately prepared for their future, right? So we are protecting the future for the ones we love, right? So it may be something they've not even thought about at this point. They may be in better jobs now and making better incomes and finally being recognized in the world. They have not thought about financial planning, right? And financial planning is different, right? So we had major financial plans around this kid. This is an expensive kid, even with health insurance, right? Think about family planning. It's different when you're trans. It's different when you're LGBTQ. Many people in these communities start saving when they're 18 years old because they want to have a family, and it's very, very expensive, even with really good benefits. So the population of trans people who need to plan for their futures will grow. So there you go. All right, we're gonna go really fast. We have no time left. Okay, so super fast.
So
this is how to be a good ally, and we're gonna go really, really fast. And you can all send me questions after. Go. You're
okay.
first.
Okay. The first one is take their lead. So especially if you're a trans parent or a friend of a trans person, your job is to listen and to support them. You want to let them do what's best for them. Don't say, you need to get on hormones, you need to do the surgery, you need to get your name changed. Just let them do what they feel is right and support them in whatever way you can.
Thank you. Part of that is calling them by their name, right? Use their name, right? Which may not be their legal name. Maybe it's not the name you knew them as before, but use their name and use it possible. If they've shared with you their pronouns, use their pronouns. When you make a mistake, just move on. Do not go into a dissertation. Just say, oh, I meant she, and move on. He, she, they, and just keep going, right? Because you don't want to bring attention back to that trans person. And the very best ally in the world is going to correct someone else who makes a mistake when the trans person is not in the room. That moves you from ally to advocate, just saying. Can make that leap right there. Share your pronouns, put them in your email signature, introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Irene, I use she, her pronouns. Would you like to share yours? Right? How do you want to be addressed, right? If you don't know someone's pronouns and you're unsure, sometimes we don't say to ask them for their pronouns, but you could say, how would you like to be addressed? I like to be called Irene and I use she pronouns. How would you like to be addressed? There's a great Indeed commercial on that if you want to Google it after. So Google Indeed Pride 2021.
Yeah, maybe like job interview or something like that.
It's super good, 56 seconds.
Or you can watch my my Pride commercials video.
Yep, you can do that and subscribe and like. Okay, so don't ask. Do not ask questions of trans people that you wouldn't ask other people, right? So I hear you're on hormones. Is that what's making you moody? You can't ask that. You wouldn't ask anybody a question like that. What surgeries have you had? These are real questions. It's almost like when a woman is pregnant and everyone in the world feels like they can come up and touch your belly. You can't. right? So don't ask questions that you wouldn't ask other people. What pills are you on? Are you on hormones? Did you do this? Have you had that? No, so don't ask. Don't ask them to see pictures of when they were a blank. Don't.
Or their dead name,
Or
anything like
don't
that.
ask, what was your old name?
Yeah, that's referred to as a dead name. Let's
Mhm.
keep it dead. I'm just kidding.
That was a good one. All right.
Okay, the next one is don't out somebody. So you never want to out somebody. And what I mean by outing somebody is, making it public in that situation that they are trans. This is for a couple of reasons. One, it's just rude, disrespectful, not nice. But secondly, and most importantly, it's dangerous. It puts my life in danger. I have a friend who's trans, and she was at a bar one time, and her friend was a little bit too drunk and started talking about how she was trans to one of the guys that had been flirting with her. The guy ended up following her outside, following her to her car, yelling all these absurd things, and she literally had to run away from this man. So don't out.
And she
Don't
was
do it.
one of the lucky ones. Just to all right. Quickly, transition. What does that mean? Is everyone the same?
Everyone is not the same. I like that little leading question. Transition means something very, very different for everybody. So some trans people choose to just socially transition, meaning they just change their name, they change their clothes they wear, and they change their pronouns maybe. Some other people choose to do that as well as medically transition. So they start to take hormones, which will feminize or masculinize their body, or they'll do surgeries, which, assist in feminization or masculinization. The point is that it's different for everybody, and every transition is just as valid and just as important. So yeah.
Okay. And then let's go back to that data we provided about around suicide being 68%.
Yeah. So
how can we change that?
Well, this is good. I mean, we're talking about being a great ally right now. And I think that it's super, super important, because when we talk about these like horrible, horrible numbers of, upwards of 50% of people try to commit suicide in the trans community, those numbers dramatically decrease. I think it's 16 out of 17, whatever that percentage is. Those numbers, they no longer want to do it when they have just one supportive member around them, whether that be a family member or a friend or whoever it is. If they have one person that supports them and believes in them and is there for them, they know they don't want to, they don't try to kill.
It's less likely. It's less likely. So the numbers go down. All right. So last but not least, learn. Your trans friend is not the person that should be teaching you unless they want to. We are in a teaching and brave space today, so we're going to let you ask whatever questions you want, right? So I said don't ask. Today you get to ask any questions you want. And then learn, right? So we mentioned that Sam is one of the newest, and she is the youngest GLAAD board member. So yay, Sam. But there's some other sites here as well, and I'm sure this deck will be shared. So transequality.org is one of my favorite. HRC for the workplace, Out and Equal for the workplace. And then when people say to you, why do you always share your pronouns? Say, go to mypronouns.org and look it up, right? Again, you're not here to educate people either. There's plenty of ways to use that World Wide Web, right? All right, so let's talk. I'm going to leave this up for 1 second, then I'm going to bring the screen down. And the reason it's up there is my personal email is there. So it is very, very often that we find a parent or loved one or a trans person who's never had anyone to talk to. This is my personal email. We don't give Sam's because she doesn't answer her emails. I answer my emails, so we give mine. Please, 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 if you're alone in any way or know someone who is, please feel free to reach out. And Sasha, if you want to share that email more broadly in case someone missed it, please, please, please feel free to reach out.